you for becoming part of our family in the politics and IR discipline. We are good. We are small, but we are powerful. We deliver things. We take care of our students, and that's very important for us.
Yeah.
So the first question, the obligatory question, is just like we talk about a bit of personal things, that you're like where you're born, raised, a bit of earliest memories, and since you are a human rights scholar, that's very important to cover some of the things from there. And we'll cover your research a bit, your interest, your hobbies, anything. So like conversation.
Yeah.
So where were you born and raised, Edzia?
So it's a complicated answer. So I was born in Bombay because my parents were living in Bombay at the time. So now it's Mumbai. But when I was born, it was still Bombay. So that's what I'm going to say. And I was born with birth complications. So my parents were not at all well off. They used to live in a chawl. You know what a chawl is? You have this sort of rows of houses all stuck together, a bit like terraced housing. Yeah. So my parents, so it's like really like what we would call in India lower middle class. Like, you're just above the poverty line. Is that kind of thing, like working hand to mouth. You can't afford to fall ill. You can't afford to take time off. You have to work all the time in order to make ends meet. So you're not poor, but you can't afford to do anything other than what you're doing, which is working. So my parents were obviously, at that level. So they couldn't afford full-time care for me because I had, complications at birth. So they sent me to my mom's parents in Goa. And so I spent my early years with my mom's parents and my mom's siblings in Goa. And then when I was about 3, they brought me back to Bombay to start my schooling. And then I spent about 13 years in Bombay, 10 years in Bombay schooling.
What, growing up, like places like Mumbai, it's like mega city.
Yeah.
Any like earliest, like good memories, like growing up in Mumbai? What's the best part?
I think it's just not necessarily having friends who are from this complete cultural melting pot. Like, I had friends who were from lots of different places in India, lots of different religions, and just being exposed to this enormous amount of culture. And, being open to all that. It's not at all insular, Mumbai. Even now, it's not at all insular. You don't get ghettos a lot of, you don't really get ghettos in Mumbai. The vast majority of people live together, and it doesn't matter to some extent, it matters what religion you are, which part of India you come from, what caste you are, and that kind of thing. But for children, it doesn't matter. So the long abiding memories of me living in Bombay is having friends from all over the place, and festivals all the time. So for somebody's festival, you go to somebody's house and eat the sweets, and then some other festival, you go to other house and eat the sweets, and that kind of thing. So it was fantastic.
Oh my God. Brilliant. But also Mumbai is quite close to the sea. It's like
it's on the sea. Yeah.
As well. So like growing close to sea is always, always like, and I feel like good about, coming close to the sea. The like huge like vastness in front of you.
That was never part of my growing up though, because where we lived was not close to the sea.
Okay.
So we would have to travel about an hour and a half by train to get to the sea, which was obviously not something that we could do, at all or even often because of our financial situation. So I think the first time I saw the sea was when I went on holiday in Goa with my parents. We used to go annually. Once a year, we would go to Goa to see my mom's family and my dad's family. So that's when I remember seeing the sea. But not in Bombay, no, don't really remember.
Because India is such a vast, huge country. How far from Mumbai to Goa is?
I don't know how much it is in miles or kilometers, but it's by train, it would be about 13 hours on the train.
Wow.
Yeah. Not express train. Express train would be 8 hours.
Okay, but it looks like far away, far.
Yeah. If you drive, it's about 18 hours.
Mm, mm, mm. So if you compare, so obviously, you lived in the both cities in Goa and like Mumbai. Which one do you prefer more?
That's a hard question. It's really hard. It's really hard. I can't say I prefer Mumbai because Mumbai is no longer what it was when I was a child.
Mm,
Places change. So I wouldn't want to go back and live in Mumbai now
mm,
because it's not what I remember it
mm.
as. And Goa is weird. Goa is a mixture of outward looking and yet inward looking.
Okay.
People have this social capital. They can speak English fluently for the most part.
Mm,
They are comfortable around
mm.
Westerners,
Uh,
so it's it's that kind of a thing. But they're also very insular. They have the same hang-ups about caste and religion and all of that. So
mm,
it's a really odd place.
mm,
So I never fit in Goa because I'm not necessarily inward looking. So
mm,
as in, like that kind of, I don't
mm.
believe in caste, and I don't think religion
Yeah,
should
yeah.
divide people and all of that. And I'm very vocal about it. So
Mm, mm,
yeah,
mm.
so I don't know. If you tell me about the past, I would obviously love to go and live back in the Bombay of my childhood,
Ah,
but not at the moment. I mean, and with the situation in India at the moment with the BJP, I mean, everything has been. I was telling a former mentor of mine that the BJP has dug up the foundations of India. They want to change it to the point where they're digging the foundations and setting new foundations in there.
mm, mm. So
And
we'll try to cover those things a bit later. I think this is
yeah.
just too deep in the beginning. but
I know.
like going back to Goa, I mean, it's quite a recent inclusion in India, isn't it? So it was a
Yeah, 61.
So it's quite
1961. Yeah.
quite recent. So there's lots of things going on as well in terms of the India's bigger politics. But do you think Goa is now more or less fully integrated, the part and parcel? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no other problem there.
No, I mean, not in terms of integration, no.
Mm.
No.
Okay.
Not like the Northeast, not like other parts of India, no.
Okay. So like one more like obligatory question, like going back to your, earliest memories, how do you think your parents shaped your understanding about the world?
Oh my God. How much time do you have?
I think parents play such a
massive
big
role
in our,
yeah,
especially from our culture. They just like live with us, forever.
Yeah.
So I just really want to touch a bit there.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Not so much my mom. I think my mom has shaped more about who I am as a person rather than my opinions and my way of thinking about the world. So more my mom has shaped more my values. My dad has definitely been the one about, because of whom I've been interested in politics. My dad was very interested in politics when he was younger. For a very long time. He would follow the elections very closely, elections in India. He would follow politics in India very closely, and he would talk to me about it. So I remember, I think I was 6 or 7 or even younger, actually. 6 or 7 when we had an election in India, and the TV was just on the whole day to follow the election results. And that's my first memory, is following the election results. Because my dad had to have the TV on the whole day. You can't watch anything else. So, and then, my dad would watch the news, every day, the news at, what was it, 9 or something like that. because that, in those days, as you know, we didn't have 24-hour TV,
Yeah.
right? So you would get news once a day at night. So yeah. So yeah, absolutely. My dad definitely shaped a lot of my political thinking. I'm, sort of center left in my thinking, especially when it comes to economics and economic systems and things like that. So that's definitely from my dad. My dad was definitely someone who supported unions, and both my parents. My parents were members of unions for their whole life, and they knew friends who were union leaders. And at that time in Bombay, there were a lot of clashes between various unions and owners. So mills and cotton mills, were quite a lot. There were quite a lot of cotton mills in Bombay at that time. Um, a lot of strikes happening to improve the conditions of workers and things. And then, of course, owners bringing in the power of the police and bringing in the power of the state to suppress these strikes. And my dad knew at least, quite a lot of people. Okay, that's exaggeration. Knew a few people who were union leaders who had been tortured by the police quite badly. And so, all those stories about unionism and what is right, what is due to someone, and all those things really, really made a big difference.
Like perhaps those were the kind of light bulb moments, like becoming a human rights scholar. I mean, do you think those were the moments you just thought that?
Not for me. I think there was definitely foundational, though. They definitely set that foundation where, where I was certainly aware of injustice, even at that age. I had a really sensitive radar for injustice. Sometimes to the irritation of my parents, because then they would say things and do things, and I would say, "How can you say that?" That's just wrong. So, because everybody has prejudice, and in India, my parents are also prejudiced against other communities, and for me, that's just nonsense. Like, how can you just say somebody is like that because they are from that community? Like, you paint the whole community with that brush. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, no, so definitely set the foundations for me. And then, of course, we had I don't know if you remember the 1992 riots. The demolition of the Babri Masjid. So I was 11 at that time. And that was a major thing for me because, we had riots in my area as well.
Wow.
And people I knew, teachers I knew had their houses destroyed. Shops that we would pass by were looted, and the priests were talking about it in the sermons about how, Catholics are taking undue advantage of the riots and looting shops for free food and that kind of thing, and shame on you and that kind of thing. So I definitely remember that was another one, and where you can't talk openly. So I remember talking to a friend, and her mom was walking behind me, and she said, "You shouldn't talk about these things loudly." So yeah, those kinds of things are quite formative because they sort of stay in your mind about what is right and what is wrong.
I mean, especially even for me, when I was growing up in Bangladesh, in my earliest memories, I mean, it's very political. So either it's dictator in power or protest all the time. There's strikes. I mean, it's just one parcel of your life.
Yeah.
And those elections, especially in Bangladesh, elections are obviously, chances are rigged, and that created anxieties for for people. Like my mother was a teacher, my father was a banker, so it came to us in a big so it never ended even after the British rule gone in 1947, but it stayed with us forever.
I mean, with Bangladesh especially, right? Because you guys had so many periods of upheaval, right? You had 47, then you had 72, and all of the things in the middle, right? And then after that, as you said, the establishment of the new state can be so much like dicey. You don't know where it's going to go and how things are going to pan out. So yeah, I can't even imagine what that must be like.
It's like, that's what, the idea about like democracy is so elusive in like places like in Bangladesh. And it's like, the people come to power and then they want to stay forever.
Yeah.
And then also they do elections as well,
Yeah.
which creates anxieties for the people. I mean, why do you need election? You can stay there forever if you want to.
Yeah.
The power comes with like full force, seriously full force. Even because in my student days, we are involved in like all kind of things, anti, this protest against the military dictator. I mean. But also, like, things happen in India because the way these countries more or less run, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, they're like it's a kind of one soul. Anything happens in India that affects Bangladesh, now affects in and that affects us, everyone. So then we also like try to divide and then say that we've got nothing to do with like they want to destroy us.
No, I know. Yeah. But then that's kind of nation building, right? That's nation building through fear, right? By making people feel like they are the outsider. So we need to protect ourselves. So we are all one, but they are outside. That's a, proper, even, everybody does that. It's rather than using nation building as a positive exercise, you use it as a negative one. So yeah, I mean, India is very much both sides of the coin, where you have a lot of positive examples of nation building, but those positive examples are also built on negative ones. So you have the vast majority of Indian national songs are from films, right? Hindi films. And almost all of those Hindi films are about India versus Pakistan. Right? So it's like all the songs that we learn to sing as children are about this enemy called Pakistan, who our brave soldiers have fought against. So it's just like ridiculous how insidious the nation building exercise can be.
I mean, it's like, you are like fighting against your basically next door neighbor, basically, your teacher, your former classmate, so suddenly they became enemy. And then you think only through their destruction we can survive.
Yeah.
It's a kind of existential crisis almost.
Very much so. Yeah.
And then went for this like nuclear race. I mean.
Yeah. I know. I mean, this is why you have to read, this is why I feel like reading South Asian literature from outside the country is so important. Like one of my favorite authors is Manto, Saadat Hasan Manto, who obviously was, a British subject before partition, and then lived in Bombay and had to leave Bombay and go to Pakistan after partition. And obviously a lot of what he has written is about partition, and it's brutal, but it's so human. It shows, humanity in all its disgrace. But what it does is it shows that that's humanity. It's not about Hindu versus Muslim.
No.
Everybody will fall. Everybody will stoop to these, absolutely barbaric levels. And your religion doesn't matter. It matters who you are as a person. So, yeah, I completely agree. I just find this whole jingoistic nationalism so irritatingly gets on my nerves, kind of. I mean, this is why I hate the Indian cricket team. Like Sam is a massive cricket fan, and his favorite team is the Indian team. I'm like the opposite.
I mean, with me, because of my, I don't know, like, ideologically, I'm quite driven by Marxism and other things. So, I basically want the demise of the state. I don't want any states. But also, like, in terms of supporting, like, any team or anything, I always support the underdog, whoever it is. I don't care.
Yeah.
But it also, I get interested about this idea about how you get mad about your country, their football match, and how you can, fight for, your We, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's about identity, right? It's
Mm,
about feeling part of something. And I
mm,
think that's it's quite a basic, I feel it's a quite a basic human need is to
mm,
belong.
mm,
And when you belong to something that makes you feel special,
mm,
that holds a lot of meaning for you. And I think that's where this whole notion of identity comes in, right? Whether that's national identity or football identity or religious identity, whatever.
mm,
The notion that we are unique, we are special, and I'm special because I'm part of this group.
mm,
I
mm,
think that's what it is. That's
mm.
why people are willing to die for certain things or willing to kill for certain things.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's all good and well, when you support something or not. But the problem is it creates you bring enemies as well by
Yeah.
doing that. No, so
Yeah.
it's me against you. My team
Yeah.
is better than you. No, I want to win against you, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very tribal.
Very tribal. Yeah.
So, I mean, um because I was reading during the summer, do you know this like Israeli historian Yuval Harari? So he wrote a couple of books, like books called Sapiens and Homo Deus and all those things. So he was talking about the problem with the like Homo sapiens, our human race. I mean, we believe in lots of stories. We are hardwired with these stories.
Yeah.
Even there is no evidence that there is something there behind it. There's nothing,
Yeah.
but we still believe that thing, that this
Yeah.
guy, this story or this like myth can deliver things. I mean, or bring
Yeah.
happiness or bring joys or bring
Yeah.
like victories.
Yeah.
And it's been always there, always
Yeah.
there. And I think this.
Yeah. It's really important.
Mm,
Yeah. Because so one of the things that we learned when I was doing I'm so this is going all over the place, but I'll say it anyway.
that's okay. That's okay.
Uh, when we were doing our electoral research is, people tell you stories about themselves and not necessarily stories in the sense of false,
Mm,
but they'll talk to you as if they are telling you a story. So if you ask them, how did you vote? It will be chronological,
mm,
or it will have some kind of sequence, some kind of inbuilt narrative,
mm,
which is a story.
mm, mm,
So I think I found it fascinating the way that people sort of relate
mm,
their experiences. They
mm,
are always narratives.
mm, mm,
There's an inbuilt structure in there. So when you said about stories being important to individuals, they are very important in the way that we think about
mm,
ourselves and the way we think about the world as well.
mm, mm,
Is finding these narratives that make sense to us.
mm, mm.
These are not just random things.
Mm. I mean, that's like Harari was saying that, like when Trump came to power, Trump was, basically, he was accused of like this post-truth politics. But Harari was saying that the Homo sapiens have been post-truth throughout their career, throughout the history. It's always about, that they say the stories and they believe those stories, which have got no evidence behind that. But you just think that, yeah, that's the story. So, I mean, we are hardwired, but also I think the post-truth is linked with the lies as well. So you have to tell lies. But I think the idea is you have to tell lies for the bigger picture because, these small lies are okay because the enemies is so powerful. They want to destroy our children's life, our family life and all those big things. So,
yeah, exactly.
I quite like this fascinating idea about, his try to dissect this the story and human lives. We are like tragic, like the Greek tragic figures.
Yeah, a little bit, I think. Yeah, I mean, for me, the tragedy is often that we don't learn from the past.
Mm.
If you look at events that happen today, it's cyclical.
Yeah.
The same thing happens over and over again with the same reasons. Similar kinds of people, similar backgrounds. It's just ridiculous how much history repeats itself. And that's the tragedy, I think. That we don't learn, that the human race doesn't learn. from the past. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think that's all.
Yeah.
A bit of sad, but also kind of ice breaking. So like coming back to you, like your area of expertise, like, I mean, one of the things, like, I mean, like human rights is always kind of political, isn't it? Since the very beginning, I think this year is the 72nd anniversary. I think the 10th of December is Human Rights Day, isn't it?
Yeah.
The 72nd. So, what do you think that the human rights or international law, like since 1948, how much they progressed? Do you think we should be optimistic?
Yeah, I do think we should be optimistic. I mean, so I think this is like it's a historical exercise, right? So 1948, there were no internationally recognized human rights.
Yeah.
And there were no legally binding human rights internationally. So any rights were citizens' rights that were legally binding, so individual states. Now we come to a point where we have innumerable international legal treaties that innumerable number of states sign on to voluntarily and create legal obligations for themselves. Right? This kind of thing used to happen with the law of the sea or, boundaries or, those kinds of things, like things that were crucial to a state's sovereignty. Those kinds of international treaties would happen for that. But to have them for something where it's about the state's citizens, or forget about citizens, even residents in a state. And then the state is bound internationally, so by international treaties, for the welfare of these residents over whom the state has jurisdiction, as they say, power, legal authority. I think that's a remarkable achievement that edifice is still standing after all that has happened in the last, 70 years or whatever. So much has happened, like the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, innumerable number of wars, obviously the whole mess in Iraq and Afghanistan. This system could have fallen apart at any point of time. And even with Trump withdrawing from the UN, the UN, it didn't fall apart, right? That was the juncture where things could have gone really wrong. Like, I feel like if he'd had a second term, the system would have fallen apart. I think it was on the precipice of basically just dismantling. And we were, as a world, very lucky that he didn't get a second term, not just for the US, but for the world system, I think. But if you think about it, it's just remarkable that states do this, that states believe that they have a legal obligation to other states to ensure the protection of their residents, because that flies in the face of sovereignty, as we've been taught it, right? So as a system, I think it's absolutely remarkable that it's still standing. It's not a perfect system.
No.
It has massive number of flaws, and the flaws are mainly politically designed. So the flaws are in the system, right? It's deliberately put into the system to make it weak, right? But then you have innumerable number of ex-systemic things that happen, like NGOs and other networks that come up to shore up the system, to build it up, to make sure that it doesn't fall down, to make sure that the weaknesses of the system that are inbuilt into it don't make it collapse. So I think that, there's absolutely every reason to be optimistic. You just have to keep your shoulder to the wheel and keep pushing it, keep holding it. Everybody's hands are needed to keep this system going.
But I mean, like Trump's example is quite, like powerful example, how, a state can take that step and then, like just destroy the things you've achieved over like last 70 years, like 4 years time. And then if you put another four years term, that could be the end. Because one of the things we learned through our international law or human rights law is all about self-compliance, isn't it? So if you do it, then other will do it. If you don't do it, then other will not do it. So if a country like USA, the most powerful country, militarily and for every way, and if they are retracted from all those good things, I think that was a dangerous move. I mean,
look at the League of Nations, right? I mean, the League of Nations collapsed in less than 20 years?
25 years.
This system could have gone that way, and this system was created, and then you had the Cold War. I mean, it could have gone that way soon after. But I think the difference really has been the human rights law, the development of human rights law, which has been in parallel with the systems on security, because the League of Nations was mainly about security, right? And there was not really much about human rights in there. I mean, I think there was a couple of declarations, but other than that, not much. But with the UN, with the development of international human rights law, that's a completely different ballgame. I think it changed how international politics is conducted. On what grounds is it conducted? And I think it creates a lot of pressure points for states, which didn't exist before. So yeah.
Because one of the things we learned from our international relations or politics stuff, that states are the main actors, the main bad guys, more or less they try to contain them with all those international law and with all human rights law, just contain these the big beast. I mean, and I think over the years, we saw since 1948, we had hundreds of laws, human rights laws and all kind of rights we now created to protect even LGBTQ people or disabled people, even the climate justice. All those new things are coming as well. So it's more containing this the big beast that these are important to protect this.
No, exactly. I mean, I don't see the state as being the bad guy. I think I know that you do, but for me, I think it's more important I think it's governments, and I think governments can run the machinery of the state the way they want to. And they can change the machinery of the state as they want to. I mean, look at Trump, right? So look at Barack Obama's 8 years, which were not perfect by a long shot, certainly not in terms of foreign policy. But look at all that he did for domestic policy, which was quite incredible. And then look at Trump's 4 years. And same state, different governments, right? Different administrations. So I think rather than looking at the state as a monolith, for me, what's more important is the governments of the day and what they bring to the table. What values, what vision or lack of, as we see with Boris Johnson, what do they bring to the table that then sets the machinery of the state in a particular direction. So I don't see the state as a negative, because as a bad guy or a villain, because with human rights, you need the state. Human rights don't function very well without the state. Right. So the system is created in such a way where the state is a necessary actor, right? But then you need the governments to implement those human rights obligations. And if the governments don't implement the human rights obligations, then human rights don't get protected. But if they do implement them, then they are the good guys, because they are protecting human rights. Right? And then they can go one step further and see whether human rights are protected outside their boundaries as well. Right? So I don't see governments or states as being negative or positive. I think it's more about the particular government of the day in that particular state and what they bring to the table.
But also some countries, especially the powerful countries, have got consistency in terms of their foreign policy. If you look at US's foreign policy about Middle East, which I teach a bit and do research, I found it's very, very consistent, whoever it is, whoever in power. So that also is like a bit of problem area as well.
Yeah.
Again, the problem is, I mean, any country, because this is the people created those Trump or like Obama, like those people. So people are behind those forces as well. So at certain point of history, people decide that, we need to have these people in power because they want to implement certain things or like go after certain, ideas. So those are the pitfalls will be always there for us, so the government and the people's choices, but also other complexities are like the socio-economic and all those other things are involved as well.
Yeah.
So if people get poorer, then the people decide something else. It's like survival mode then. So like in terms of the human rights, your research area, like, I mean, because I know like you use lots of quantitative stuff. I mean, no.
Because no, the last time I did quantitative stuff was for my PhD.
You're the only one who knows some,
I know it because I used it for my PhD. I've not really done any quantitative stuff since.
Okay. Tell us then about your PhD. I mean...
No, please. Next question.
Okay, that's fine.
God.
Like, I mean, tell us your, like, the most exciting, like, research bit. I mean, the things you really enjoyed. And then, you feel that, I did something. I bring people together. I know, like, you work with the students very closely with all those advocacy things. I mean, those are the brilliant stuff you like initiated over the years. Tell us some of those things a bit.
So that's not really about the research that I've done. So with the students, I've just started doing a bit of research on that. So most of the research that I've done over the last 10 years has been for the qualitative election study of Britain, right? So which my colleague Christy Winters, who's based in Germany, and I have basically been sort of working on. And, when she started it in 2010, we didn't realize what kind of a decade we're going to have. Elections every 2 years. If somebody had told me we were going to have elections every 2 years, I was like, I'm not joining. Oh my God. It's like absolutely, I don't know what to say. I mean, 2010, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019. And so we basically had, waves of studies for each of these. So we ran focus groups and interviews for every of each of. We didn't do the 2014 AV referendum, thank God. But other than that, we've done everything, and it's just been a complete exhausting because doing research from scratch in this way, where you collect data from scratch, where it's not there for you to use, you are creating it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of someone.
But also that's very exciting as well, talking to people.
It's exciting to be in the field, and it's exciting to talk to people and to try and understand. So the point of the qualitative election study of Britain is to try and understand how people think, right? So surveys will tell you what they think, but they don't tell you how they think or why they think the way they do, right? And so those were the two questions that really drove us to do the studies, is to try and understand. If somebody is saying, I'm going to vote for the Conservatives, why? How did you come to that decision? Right? Or if somebody is saying, this leader is a complete smarmy person, or, is a complete whatever, buffoon or whatever. Why do you think that? What is it about them that attracts you or doesn't attract you, or that makes you think that they are a leader or not a leader? So those are the kinds of questions that really got us, thinking about the topic of elections and how people think. This idea of the vote calculus. How do people calculate who to vote for? And how does that then change? What are the factors that change it? And, and it's absolutely fascinating how people think, how people, this is what I was telling you about stories. how people make sense of what they have done to themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Like before the election, some people will say, I'm going to vote it like this. And then when you ask them after the election, they say, no, I voted that way. And then they have to work out why and tell us why did they vote that way, right? And sometimes people can't even articulate it. Like, I remember what stuck in my mind is one of the first elections we did. I think it was the 2010 election. So the first time I was involved, this was during Clegg Mania, right? So somebody that when in the focus group said that it was really taken with Clegg, and everything he's saying is superb, and they're going to vote for him. And then when we brought this person back after the election, we asked them, so who did you vote for and why? So they said, so I went into the voting booth and I looked at the names and I just clicked Tory. And I just went with what I always do. It's absolutely amazing how it shifts and how people, sort of make sense of their own behavior post hoc. And it's just, So this is what I find really fascinating, is to get the glimpse into how people think.
I mean, I want to bring like my thought about this, like this election. One of the things my ideological view is, if you look at UK's history, the Conservative Party is the most successful party in terms of election. I think they're very clever in terms of, this election process, or this mechanism. But also the part of the game is they tend to defund education. So if you defund education, then there's a chance for there'll be less critical thinking on the ground. So look at the Conservative policies over the years. So this is part and parcel. If you look at, our education system now, it's almost like, breaking down. But you can see that more chance people like Boris Johnson even, come to power. And if like Boris Johnson even stands tomorrow, he will get elected again, looks like. So do you think is the right way to think, the
I don't think so. Not in the UK. I think in the UK, people are socially conservative. People don't like change, like small c conservative, like Oakeshot's conservative, right? They don't like big change, So and people are generally centrist as well, again, because they're conservative. So I think the problem at the moment is that the Labour Party has very rarely had a leader with a vision or a vision where it's been a centrist left party. A lot of Labour has been too much to the left. Obviously Tony Blair was the exception, right? And some may say that he went too far away from the left. But I think that's the problem with the UK is partly it's because the populace is just socially conservative and doesn't like massive change, doesn't like swinging from one side to the other, that kind of thing. And I think the Conservative Party sort of embodies, even though it's not real, but it embodies that idea of stability.
So they can tell that story successfully and the people believe that.
Yeah. Even though it may not be true. It's just like with the SNP and Scottish Labour. If you look at the manifestos of the SNP and Scottish Labour is to the left of SNP. Right? But the SNP have completely won the story on it being left of Labour. So it successfully tells that story, whereas Labour can't.
That's quite.
If you read the manifestos, it's quite shocking because the SNP is not as left as it portrays itself to be, but it successfully sold that story to people in Scotland. I'm not saying that they are lying. I'm saying that there is an image that is now set among the vast majority of people, and it's going to take a lot to change that image.
So going back to that point, the British people are socially conservative. I mean, why? I mean, what's the historical background behind that? Why they are socially conservative?
I have no idea. I
Mm.
really don't know. I mean, if you look at the British history as well, it's not had as many revolutions as many
No,
other
no, no.
parts of Europe. And even the revolutions, like, two of the civil wars that they had were bloody. And,
Mm.
the third one was not even a civil war. It was a completely bloodless parliamentary coup. So
Mm.
I don't know.
That's interesting. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
country became hardwired with this idea about, we want change, but very, very incremental, not
Very, very slowly.
slowly. Yeah.
Yeah. Very slow
I
change.
still remember, like, before the election, I was talking to you about, the Corbyn's chance to win. And you said that no chance. But I was really hopeful, to see. And I thought I was so naive, Then no, I really thought that this guy has a chance. None. Nil.
No. He lost more seats than he did the first time around.
And also you can see, like, he's like competing with a guy, who's a documented problematic guy.
Yeah.
Still
Exactly.
no chance at all.
No.
No.
I think that's another reason why, like, the Conservatives win is because people don't want to vote for Labour. Labour has not managed its image very well.
What will be your advice for the Labour, the current leader?
Wait, who's the current leader? I don't even know. Of course, Keir Starmer. Gee, I completely forgot. Oh my God. Been out of it so long.
Because
I actually like Keir Starmer. I think he has a lot about him. But again, I think he's a bit like, for me, he's a bit like Charles Kennedy without the affability. The Lib Dem leader who passed away.
Yeah.
I think he's a bit like that. Like, he has a lot about him, but Charles Kennedy was very, very sort of approachable.
Yeah.
And very much, there was a lot of charisma about him. Whereas with Keir Starmer, he seems very unapproachable. He seems very cerebral.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem, because people need to be able to trust you. You need to come across as competent, and people need to be able to trust you. And with him, I think the competence level is there, but people don't know where he stands. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
can I trust this guy? Who is this guy? And I think he needs to really get over that. Find a way of making himself authentically approachable.
Like part of the society, part of the community. He can relate himself to the mass. I mean, he almost like, his image, I mean, the way I see it, is like very bureaucratic. He looks like a kind of, some kind of bureaucrat, like some kind of civil servant.
Yeah.
So lots of technicalities there, rather than, just the same language of the mass. He can,
Yeah.
So
I think his policies would go down much better than Corbyn's policies.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he's at the stage where he could win.
Because he fits in that idea of like socially conservative, more like incremental change, and he kind of fits in. The main thing is just the image that he just cannot relate himself.
Yeah, I think the thing with Boris Johnson is who he is.
Yeah.
Right? You may not like who he is, but you know who he is. There's no question mark about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then the question is, do you like what he's saying he's going to do? And if you like what he's saying he's going to do, then you vote for him.
Yeah.
You're not voting for him because he's the best father or the best husband in the world.
No.
Forget about even the best human being in the world.
Yeah.
You're voting for him because of what he said he's going to do. And in effect, he has done it. He said they're going to get Brexit done. They did.
Yeah.
So he kept the big manifesto promise.
But in like other cases, he's like not that competent in terms of,
He's not competent at all.
No.
I don't think he's competent at all.
So
but the thing is that he got it done, right?
Got it done.
He got enough people around him to get whatever he said he's going to do done. That's competence in the end. That's what it is, right? You say you're going to get something done, you get it done.
And then people just like stick to that. Yeah, he did that thing because it was such a hugely emotional kind of thing. And then the people really, almost like more than half of the population decided to go for it. And then he came as, yeah, I can deliver. And then he can be, part of that mass, that I am part of that, whatever it takes.
Yeah. I mean, it's his name on the tin, right?
Yeah.
Whoever got it done in the end, it's his name on the tin. Right? So if they had not managed to get Brexit, then it would still be his name on the tin.
Yeah. But also it's built on like lots of lies as well, this post-truth politics.
Of course. Yeah. I'm not saying that he's honest. I'm saying that he has the image of being competent to some extent. At least when it comes to Brexit.
No, it's like
no matter, never matter what's happening with Northern Ireland, never matter with what's happening with all the trade rules with the EU or with other countries. Yeah. We are out of the EU. That's what he said he's going to do.
So that's a like serious breakthrough for him, and I think that will take him to a perhaps long haul. I mean, he might stay for 2 or 3 terms. I mean, this is the people.
And certainly 2 terms. The only thing I can see scuppering something is anything related to the COVID handling, which of course, very rightly, then he has decided he doesn't want the report out, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I can see scuppering his chances. If there's this massive scandal that comes out about COVID. So, keep an eye out on Dominic Cummings.
Yeah.
Dominic Cummings should keep quiet and leak his stuff to the press because nobody's paying any attention to him. It's like sour grapes.
Yeah. I mean, it shows, the charisma of the leader, whatever it is. So, the previous belief was that Dominic Cummings basically, made him. But more or less, Boris Johnson proved that no, he can get away, without Dominic Cummings or his support or all those intellect. I mean,
just because we don't like people doesn't mean people don't have charisma, right? Look at Trump.
Yeah.
Even when he lost, he had 30% of the vote, 30 or 32% of the vote.
74 million.
More even.
74 million people voted for him.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Even when he lost. So, just because we don't find people charismatic doesn't mean that they don't have charisma.
But also, do you think the charismatic is very personal as well? That half of the population can think that he's charismatic and half of the population, no, he's just a buffoon.
Yeah, exactly. Nigel Farage was the same, right?
Yeah. He's got something there. So, just like the UK politics just cannot get rid of him. He just comes back.
Yeah.
Stuff. So I want to touch a bit of the climate change politics and the human rights thing. What is human rights saying about this, like climate justice? I mean, how much do you think human rights mechanism or like framework can actually, do some good stuff for this climate justice? Because, people have the right to live, So if people don't have clean air, then they will die. So lots of things are linked with climate justice.
Yeah.
Just like say some of the stuff, then that will be great for the audience.
I haven't thought about this a lot. I've sort of been aware of things on the periphery, because it's not my main area of research, right? But so the thing about the human rights legal framework is that there is a lot of room for interpretation, and deliberately there is a lot of room for interpretation, both legal and philosophical. So things are not set in stone. Things evolve. Just like human life evolves, the framework has proved itself very flexible in evolving, right? So when it was first set up, there was no mention of LGBTQ plus rights. and that has evolved to become part of equality rights legislation, right? Um, so so that's one area. Another area that we've seen is, like you pointed out, so um, for a long time there was this sort of division between civil and political rights. So rights of the to freedoms to do things, right? Freedoms to meet, freedoms to practice your own religion, blah blah blah. And what are economic, social, and cultural rights? So this idea of freedom from something. So freedom from hunger, or freedom from poverty, or freedom from homelessness, or whatever. And this dichotomy has sort of over time reduced, right? So the dichotomy was that the freedom to rights, the civil and political rights, are rights that should come first, and the freedom from rights can come later. Because those are more difficult, they need more resources, blah blah blah. And then over time, this sort of breakdown is, we've seen that it's completely nonsense, because you can't break down human life and say, oh, I'm just going to have my freedom to believe even though I die of poverty, right? It doesn't work like that. Human life is not to be broken down into silos, so you can't break down human rights into silos. You can't say this comes first and that comes afterwards, because it's all integrated. So the flexibility of the framework has really shown up in this kind of, first of all, the breaking up of the dichotomy, but also in terms of linking these rights. So where you have both domestic and international courts identifying that the right to education or the right to water is a fundamental right. So it's as important as your right to life. Right? Whereas, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, when it was like 1976, when you had the two conventions, the two covenants, that was completely bonkers, that idea. Because you then had this hierarchy. So I think the human rights framework can definitely do much more, and has been doing a lot more, about incorporating new claims. Just as it has done with the LGBTQ plus claims, or the claims from indigenous peoples. So I'm not familiar with how far that has gone, because I've not been following the literature on it. But when I, about 10 years ago, there were already discussions about the rights of future generations, and that being one way to incorporate climate justice. So, it's not just justice for today's generation, so human rights of today's generations, of people who live today, but people who could live in the future. And what kind of, so we are sort of violating their rights by destroying the climate, by destroying, the ecosystems and everything. Right. So there was already that discussion about the rights of future generations, and whether those would be legal rights, whether they would be moral rights, and what would that mean. So that would be one way of looking at climate justice, right? So creating a moral imperative for why we need climate justice. But then, the usual, the usual discussion that has already taken place about the indivisibility of rights. That if you want the right to life, you need all those conditions in place to enjoy that right to life, to have that right to life protected. And you can't just, say the right to life means the state is not going to kill you. That's not the only interpretation of the right to life. So I absolutely think that there's a lot that can be done. And probably is being done. I'm just probably not aware of it.
No, that's like one of those areas, because it looks like we are in a kind of crossroad of our planet's life. Even like this week, I think IPCC published those reports. I mean, this is dangerous situation now. So all the rights we created over the years suddenly can all gone. And that's the end of things. I mean, for everything. But also climate justice is linked with, the poorer countries who did not do the crime, but, got the maximum punishment for for those crimes. So
Yeah.
like another particular thing, I mean, I'm more interested is like, this like transitional justice. I mean, do you think you can say some things about transitional justice? Because that's one of the areas, like when the country, came out from very, brutal past, and then, how to, deal with
Yeah.
those.
Not my area at all, Abdullah.
Mhm.
So, Kurt obviously does a lot of work on transitional
Yeah.
justice. I haven't really looked at transitional justice at all. Not that much, certainly. Um, yeah, and certainly not in the last 10 years. So
And
I won't be able to say much about
that's
it.
okay. That's okay. Like one of the things you do, like in your the students' work, like all this like advocacy thing. I saw you guys were campaigning for someone imprisoned in like Iran and so other places. Can you tell us a bit more on those things so that the future students who can be interested about this kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's a module that one of the two modules that I have for the undergraduate honors program. And so that's called human rights advocacy. So as part of the module, students design and run their own campaign. So as part of a group. And the campaign is for an imprisoned academic or student. And the choice of the academic or student comes from this NGO, which is based in New York. And the NGO is called Scholars at Risk. And they advocate for scholars, both academics and students, who are in some form of danger, either because they are going to be, they are being threatened by the state, either for who they are or for what they have said or written, or they're already imprisoned or on death row or whatever. So the NGO identifies about 4 or 5 academics, and then I have the students choose one academic for whom they're or a student for whom they're going to run a campaign. And so the students basically do that over the course of the module.
Okay.
And it's a very much an iterative exercise where the students come up with the ideas and they run them past me, and then we'll discuss the pros and the cons of what ideas they have, and then go back to SAR, the Scholars at Risk, and then they will give their feedback. And so it's very much like it's an internship essentially, because they are doing everything from scratch. They are choosing the case, they are designing the campaign, they are running the campaign, and then they're evaluating the campaign and writing a report on it. They're obviously being, their assessment, there is assessment on the module, but it has to do with all these parts of the campaign. And thinking about the academic literature on what works and what doesn't work in human rights campaigns.
An amazing story. I mean, can you give us any particular case where, students did amazing job?
They do an amazing job every year because it's very hard. Both emotionally and in terms of time.
Yeah.
A lot of the cases that students read, the person has been tortured multiple times, or they have undergone solitary confinement for months on end, or they are in urgent need of medical help. And, they're all quite difficult cases. All the cases that the students advocate for are of someone who is imprisoned. Often on death row as well. So they may be executed at any moment. So they're very, very difficult cases to deal with emotionally for someone who's not, I've been doing the work on human rights for now over 15 years. So you get like a thick skin, because otherwise you can't function. But the students are not used to that. So it can be quite emotionally difficult for them. So it's a lot of learning that they have to do. The thing with the campaigns is you often see the effects after the campaign has ended, like, a year later or whatever. It's very rare to see the campaigns, to see the effect of the campaigns immediately.
Yeah.
Especially because this is just a 3-month campaign. It's a really short campaign. So, one of the ones that really touch me, which I always share with the students, is even if you don't bring about a change in the material circumstances of someone's life. So, somebody's been imprisoned, they are still in prison after you finish the campaign. What you always will end up doing is bringing about a change in their emotional circumstances. Because they know that there are people that they have never met, people that they have never seen and probably will never meet or see, who care about what's happening to them. And I think this is the core of what human rights advocacy is. Nigel Rodley, who was the former special rapporteur on torture, had said the importance of shining a light in the darkest of places. That's where it starts, is awareness and talking about what you're seeing. Change starts from that place. If you don't shine a light, nobody will know what's happening. And so what the students are doing is they're shining that light. They're making more people aware of what is happening to this person. And that always makes a difference to that person. And so I've had a letter from one of the people that the students had campaigned for. And then, they wrote to him and showed him, all the students in Dundee who had written messages of solidarity to him and taken pictures and everything that they had done, and they had sent it to him. And he wrote back after his term of imprisonment was over, saying how much emotional support he got from that letter, how much it meant to him that he was not forgotten. Because that is the thing that, in imprisonment, that's what the guards are telling you. Nobody cares about you. You're going to die in this cell. Right? The world has forgotten you. You're going to die here. And having a letter like that from a bunch of students in Scotland made all the difference, and keeps on making the difference to people who are in this situation. And this is the notion of solidarity. Even if you don't bring about a change in the imprisonment, you're making sure that this person knows they are not forgotten. And they can draw on that support for strength when they need it.
I think
that comes up over and over again.
This is an amazing story. I mean, oh my God. I'm thinking of, just run it for a year long, not like 3 months.
I would love to run it for a year as a year-long module, but
these are the things.
I don't think we can. I don't think the university will let us.
There should be resources for this. This is just an amazing work you have been doing. I mean, and then, because these are like tangible, like gain. You can see that, actual outcome from this. And then because also it's like spreading the knowledge, and then people become aware. It's not like just one student or two students, and then it becomes part of a community, and then it's state, and then the whole world. And so these are very powerful tools as well. But also students get serious experience, skills as well. I mean, so I saw like some of our students become, charity worker, or like become it, they're running their own charity. These are like powerful tools they were aware of, and then become skilled. So good for you. Amazing story. So like, for what else the students should come to Dundee to study human rights? Why we are special?
Well, we don't have a human rights program, right? So we don't have an undergraduate human rights program, which is a shame. But if they are interested in human rights, then I think what they would get in our politics programs is a broad understanding of the world within which human rights function, right? So you have the specialist human rights modules, but then you have also area-specific modules like yours, for example. You also have IR modules, and so a lot of all of this sort of builds together to give that foundation about how do human rights then function in the world. What is the world of politics in which human rights advocates have to function, have to navigate. And I think that's quite interesting for us, because we are such a small department that it's incredible that we have the resources to do that, which we don't, but we still do it. This is the breadth of what we offer is something that you'll often find in a very big department. But we have this really good, it's a double advantage where we are small and therefore we are very accessible to the student, but we also offer this breadth of options. So students get a wide foundation in which they can then specialize. They can choose to specialize, especially, for example, with their dissertation. Yeah, and that's not something that you'll often find in many universities in the UK. That accessibility, the ability to have contact with your lecturer, to have like contact time, but also to get that breadth of expertise. And then Dundee is a very easy city to live in. Again, compared to a lot of other cities.
I mean, I did a podcast last week with one of our former students, Natalie Palmer. She works as a diplomat for the UK Foreign Office, but posted in UN.
Yeah.
So she's one of the persons who basically takes care of the Africa desk for the UK. It's amazing work she's been doing. So she's the person who writes, all those like resolutions as well. And she was talking about, this like human rights module she did like with you, and then the things she learned, that the skills she gained really, really helped. So she was traveling in places like Darfur and all those places. And then, the network she's creating. So that's important part and parcel of that kind of mechanism, the shining light, so that people
exactly
things. And so amazing work. So like, I think I really want to touch this one very important question, which really affects me, and I think about that. So like, like in the like medical profession, they have something called like detection bias or like surveillance bias. So the more you see closely, the more you find illnesses, and all those imaging and all those X-ray, all those new technologies. So you like getting more and more things. And I also think that the human rights have got similar kind of surveillance bias or detection bias. The more we are learning more about those things, because of the technology, because of the awareness and everything. So two things can happen here. One thing is people might say that, we are getting worse in terms of human rights. But the other part is we actually really care about those things.
Yeah.
So
no, you're absolutely right, Abdullah.
Right. Do you think so? Like both is true. One is like it's quite depressing because
I don't think we're getting worse. I think a lot of this is about what we would call reporting bias. The same thing what you're saying. So more things are being reported, partly because of technology, partly because of awareness. And so because more things are reported, you think that more things are worse, but they're not.
It's like we actually care about humanity. We care about that we can connect to things what happening in like places like in Darfur or in Syria or in Myanmar.
No, exactly. The statistical evidence doesn't show that we are getting worse.
Okay.
In terms of human rights, no.
So we need more detection, definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely the issue of reporting bias. Yeah. So the more ways that you learn how to report, both in terms of technology, but also offline, maybe you'll have more people on the ground, or you'll have more resources to devote to certain things. And more, awareness about things. So, if human rights expand into various areas, then you will probably get more violations, right? So, absolutely. I don't think it's about things getting worse. There may be certain areas in human rights in certain countries that are getting worse, but not overall across the globe.
Okay, good. So, like, I think we talked quite a lot. So the amazing talk with you today. I think I learned so many things from here. just like, because we did lots of denser stuff. So like, just like some lighter stuff. Like, what's your hobby? Like, what's your pastime? Well, I
watch TV a lot.
I know you are a cat lady. You have got 2 cats. And
Well done.
they're like, overly possessive about you,
Yeah, there she is.
They control your life as
That's my spirit animal. She's my spirit animal.
I mean, how much work is involved there, taking care of cats?
Cats take care of themselves.
So the pretty...
Sam is saying, what about that one?
Oh my God.
She's your spirit animal.
Hi, Sam.
Sam's clearing out you're getting some work done downstairs. So Sam's clearing up.
Oh my God. And also I know like you are a big Lord of the Rings fan, isn't it? Tolkien fan.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings. I like fantasy a lot. So Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Those are the 2 main ones. But yeah, I watch a lot. I watch a lot of TV. Basically, that's it. I watch a lot of cooking programs and a lot of fantasy programs.
Tell us any current program you can recommend.
So I'm rewatching MasterChef Australia with Sam. It's all 11 seasons, and now we are rewatching them because Sam has not seen them.
Oh my God. I mean, I think that would be very tiring for me to watch MasterChef.
I love it. You learn so much about food. I have learned so much about food from watching TV programs. So, yeah.
But I think the best part of MasterChef is just how diverse the world is becoming.
Yeah.
And you can see in the UK, someone from Bangladesh can be a master chef here.
Yeah. Nadia.
That's an amazing
You're talking about
story.
Nadia?
Yeah. That's an amazing story. Just amazing story.
She's an incredible lady. Absolutely amazing. Did you see her documentary on Anxiety and Me?
Yeah.
It's just amazing. She has all that and she still does so much. She's just amazing person.
I mean, I just see that she became a kind of machine, like she's everywhere. She's
everywhere.
She's making cake for the Queen, She's on the morning show, she's in the evening show, and then she's doing her own blogs, writing books. I mean, oh my God. I think she's
incredible.
Yeah. Okay, the last question is advice for the students, the future students. What kind of advice you want to give, to become successful in their studies? Or even who wants to be like human rights scholar, the future human rights researcher, what kind of advice will give them? What kind of preparation they need? What kind of commitment?
I think the only advice I could give to anyone is to be passionate about something and to follow that passion, to try and find a way of turning that passion into a career, because that will sustain you when times get difficult. If you're passionate about, if you really care about some aspect of your job, that will get you out of bed in the morning. I think you and I know that that's the case for us because things have been very tough for us recently. But, there's something in the day that you're looking forward to doing as part of your job. And then that gets you through the day. So for me, I think that would be the key is, I personally spent a very, very long time trying to find what career I wanted. And once I found it, and it was from trying different things. That is the other thing is, just try different things. Don't think that something is not for you. Just try it. It may not be for you, but then it's not for you. Right? So, so those would be the 2 things is, just try your hand at something. If you think this is not for you, then at least you've given it a shot. And to try and find something that you're really passionate about and then turn that passion into a career. So those would be the 2 things. And then, of course, the third thing would be is once you find that career, make sure that you have a proper work-life balance, because when you're passionate about things, you want to do that thing all the time, and that's not good for your mental health. So So once you find that passion, you still need to find that work-life balance.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, one thing I learned that, one thing will make our life easy if you actually become ambitious for a cause or for a group's cause rather than just for yourself. Because if you become ambitious about yourself, then it will tire you down very easily. And then it will also put you in lots of trouble as well. So always go for some kind of cause you think that you will fight for and passionate about. And then you'll not find it, tiresome because your heart is there.
Yeah.
So that's my addendum with your advice. Edzia, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me.
So I think we had a great time. Lots of things we talked about. Hopefully, people can take something good from here.
Yeah.